Hello everyone and welcome to my political compass test. I decided I'd do a video where I don't do my silly voice. No silly voice on this one. And yeah, I always kind of like this one. I love the concept that it has a compass instead of just being a left or right wing thing. And it's like an XY axis where I think it's the Y one on the top. It says authoritarian on the top and libertarian on the bottom. So usually I don't usually overall I don't think an online quiz can kind of gauge, like, maybe I'm just being arrogant or being a narcissist. I don't think an online quiz can gauge where I stand accurately. I think my political ideology is far more nuanced and in depth than that. But otherwise, this is probably the most accurate test on the internet. I might also do a six values quiz in a few weeks or something like that, because I hear that one's good as well. But yeah, here we go. Take the test. If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. Well, I don't like globalization, but I guess if it was inevitable, I'd probably click agree. I'd always support my country whether it was right or wrong. I'm gonna click disagree for that one. I do have a deep love of my country. I'm a nationalist, but you get problems like the Iraq War, and if I was British or if I was American, I wouldn't really agree with that. You're not a free thinker if you support anything blindly. You're practically just indoctrinated. No one chooses his or her country of birth, so it is foolish to be proud of it. I'm going to click strongly disagree on that one. While it is true you do not choose your country of birth, you don't choose anywhere you're born, you don't choose your family, but the environment that you grow up in is what makes you who you are. It is so much to do with your identity. And I think a country, the idea of a nation, is very important to your identity, your own culture is. So I do think you should be proud of. You should be proud of the environment, the values, the ideas that made you. Our race has many superior qualities compared with other races. Um, Agree, because I'm not too into the whole. I don't think races are too different, but if you look at sports, there's definitely differences there. They say Europeans are better at water sports because the proportion of their torsos to their legs and arms, their limbs makes them more buoyant and better swimmers. For they're better for endurance and stuff. And then of course blacks are much better at sports that require fast twitching muscles, so they're better runners. They're better basketball players, I guess. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Uh, Agree. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. I'm going to click strongly agree on that one because I don't really agree with the whole concept of international law. International law is what the most powerful nations decide is the law. And just law in general, if justice cannot be upheld, if a law cannot be upheld, it practically doesn't exist. Um, and then I studied a lot on UN military interventions and stuff like that, and the UN is a total shit show. It can't change anything. Every time they send in a peacekeeping force, they always have to call on the big guns, and they say that the Iraq War was unjustified. They say that Crimea was unjustified. They say all those things are in breach of international law, but not much happens to these countries. Maybe Russia got a few sanctions slapped on them, but the U.S., Britain, and everything, they didn't get their UN resolution for an invasion of Iraq the second time round, and since they are the UN, since it can't punish them, they are above international law in that regard. There is now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. I'm going to say strongly agree, because when you think of, particularly with US media, it's also in UK and Irish media as well, you got people like Stephen Colbert, and you got shows like The View, and John Oliver and everything, and these people, they're not really news, they're not really about, they're not, you can't really call them news people, but people do get their news from them, and they very well know that. And they use their position as comedians or as entertainers to get away with more than your regular news network would. And they spread disinformation everywhere, as I'm sure all of you know, and yeah, that's why I strongly agree on that one. They should be held to the same standards as a journalist should be. And on to page 2. Now the economy, we're talking attitudes here, not FTSE index. People are ultimately divided more by class than by nationality. Um, I'm going to say agree with that because, um, when you think of Europe, certainly we are more divided by nationality than we are by class. But if you look at definitely the upper echelons of society, they collude with each other. You got George Soros. You have every nationality in the upper 1% who have the power. They collude with each other. Then you have all the Marxists, all about the international workers revolution is quite Trotskyite. So I'm going to say agree on that. I'm not going to go strongly agree because I know whatever way this program is going to work to determine my position on stuff. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. I'm going to say agree on that because if you look at cases like Venezuela, um, if people are fully employed and their money is worthless, they can't they can't buy anything. You even think as early back as the 1970s with the oil crisis, just the late 70s, the great inflation that was part of the cause for why Carter got the boot after one election and Ronald Reagan moved in as president then. Um, because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. Um, I think the one thing that we can learn from the modern world is the power that NGOs have. You don't require government regulation a lot of the time uh, for like the PR value of being a company that is invested in fighting something like global warming, whether you believe it or not. You don't require government regulations to get those countries on board, or to get those companies on board with that idea. It's all about PR value. I don't think it's necessary, so I'm going to say disagree. From each according to his ability to each according to his need is a fundamental good idea. Get fucked. Strongly disagree. It's a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now bottled, branded consumer product. Um, I'll say disagree. If you can. No, I'm going to say strongly disagree. If people can sell something, let them sell it. Um, I have no right to tell people how to spend their money. If they want to spend money on something as stupid as water that you can just get out of a tap, then by all means, just go ahead and power to the people who are able to sell that water. It's not like snake oil; it doesn't hurt anyone. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. Strongly disagree. It is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society. It's regrettable, so I'm going to say agree, but I wouldn't do anything to get rid of it. Protectionism is necessary in trade. Is sometimes necessary in trade. I'm going to say agree on that because when you think of all these globalized free trade deals, they can just reap out manufacturing jobs and hard industry jobs away from areas and just leave them impoverished, leave them with nothing in their place. And if you think of the case of the EU, Fortress Europe keeps out it tariffs, it taxes, it makes Chinese goods and poorer countries. It makes their manufactured products more expensive to buy within Europe. So it kind of upholds, it maintains a little bit of the manufacturing industry within Europe. So I guess if there's one thing I could agree with on the EU, it would probably be that, Fortress Europe. So agree. The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver a profit to its shareholders. Um, I'm gonna say agree. We require companies to produce wealth, and while it's not like while it's not the right of anyone to have wealth, I'm a meritocrat. I like a society where people strive and are rewarded for their hard work. but also believe that the most wealth, the way it makes its way down from the wealth creators, the wealth producers, more wealth is produced by unregulated industry. Um, and you want industries to be competitive, so I'm gonna say strongly agree on that one. The rich are too highly taxed. Um, well, in my country they are, perhaps not the U.S. Agree. What happens in Ireland, I should say, is we are in an English speaking country, so when the taxes are too high, when you got people like Bono and Irish people Irish people hate Bono. They think he's a total cunt. Uh, Definitely wasn't good PR for him when a few years ago it was discovered that he actually doesn't pay any taxes in Ireland, and neither do a lot of Irish celebrities. And this is because we're an English speaking country. If you make money, it costs too much to pay tax here, and it's your money. You didn't make it in Ireland. You might have made it somewhere else. Who's to say that you have to pay it to our government? And if you're English speaking, there's Irish people all over the world. There's Irish people in the UK, especially in the US. We're very well liked in the US. Why not just move out of the country? So you probably will bring in less taxes by raising tax. You bring in less revenue by raising taxes on the rich in Ireland. We should lower them. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. I'm going to say agree, or strongly agree. The whole concept of a public or socialized healthcare system, I agree with it when it's there for people who cannot afford to pay for it. And I know it makes it more expensive if it works like Obamacare, that rich people aren't on board with it too. Uh, but socialized healthcare companies, they shouldn't act as a company that's there to make profit. They offer up too much competition with private companies then, and that's what drives up premiums for other people. If you look like the case in what we have in Ireland, the situation here, some of our private healthcare companies, they're only half private. They're not strictly private. They're half run by the government. They're half nationalized, and because of that, all the government-run healthcare is far too big. It's the biggest in the country, and no small healthcare companies or healthcare insurance providers can compete with them. So, yeah, everyone depends in Ireland on the socialized healthcare system, which is total shit. Yeah, move on from there. Government should penalize businesses that mislead the public. Um, I'm going to say disagree. Because what is advertising? Advertising is basically propaganda. It is misleading. Think of Apple; they're masters of propaganda. They practically have a religious following. It's almost like Steve Jobs is their Jesus, their Messiah, and the Apple stores are like their churches, the place where they gather to worship. And Apple products are shit. They look really nice, and everyone says they're the best, but anyone who knows anything about tech knows they're not worth the money at all. But they generate a lot of wealth. They're a good company. They're cute. They're extremely successful. So I wouldn't penalize for stuff like that. But if, like, let's say they're selling snake oil, maybe or something that's harmful, something that absolutely isn't what they do, Samsung should be penalized for something like their phones blown up in everyone's pockets. We'll just say that. A genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability of predator multinationals to create monopolies. I agree with that. Like, I like a deregulated market, but the free market does not work when there is monopoly. You do need a government strong enough to step in to prevent. You do need a government to step in to make sure the free market is always competitive. The freer the market, the freer the people. Strongly agree. Now look at some of your personal social values. Abortion when the woman's life is not threatened should always be illegal. Well, the situation we have in Ireland is abortion is illegal in all circumstances except when the mother's life is in danger. And I generally agree with that stance. I would consider myself a pro-lifer in Ireland, but I'd be moderate in general. In a hypothetical Ireland, I'd agree if, let's say, the girl is underage, if she's under the age of 17 or something like that, then maybe for her own personal health, or let's say her mental well-being, then she probably should be able to get an abortion for that. Um, I don't really agree with abortion for rape. Let's say if it happened to somebody I knew or somebody that I was able to have a say over the matter, but certainly I don't want to remove the option for a mother if she was raped to terminate her pregnancy. But then in Ireland, we kind of have a slippery slope happening here. We have a thing called the Eighth Amendment, which protects, it gives equal rights, equal human rights to an unborn child as it does to a mother. So it protects against pretty much every form of abortion. And my great fear is if that gets repealed, and we're going to have a referendum soon, definitely with the new Taoiseach in, who's basically like Ireland's Trudeau. We could see abortion on demand in Ireland in the next few years, which is something I really do not want. I don't want to open the floodgates. So um, I'm gonna click, I'm gonna click disagree just because it's a theory test. All authority should be questioned. I'm going to say strongly agree. The most healthy thing a people can do is question authority, question power. When you think of libertarian thinking, where it's fear of government, I think the reason why libertarianism is on the grow these days is part disaffection with establishment politics. Definitely, you see a new extraordinary thing coming out of the left here, where they reject all new labor. They're even more left wing in a lot of regards than 40, 50 years ago. When they're practically socialists in Europe. Um, but from the libertarian perspective, I think it's fear of power. It's not fear of government that is fueling the growth of libertarianism. And I'm deeply fearful of huge corporations, of corporations like Google, data mining, and all that. Corporations like Facebook and Twitter censoring free speech. I'm actually more fearful, I think, of those international corporations which control social media than I am of government. I'm deeply fearful of Hollywood, of the producers of media, and how they can culturally change a country, change my country, change the way people think through, basically propaganda. So all authority should be questioned. An eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. Well, that's from the Old Testament. I'm not a I'm not a practicing Christian. I wouldn't say I believe in it. I'm probably a deist if you're going to call me anything. Um, but no, my moral values are New Testament, so I'm going to say strongly disagree. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theaters or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. Um, it's a great thing in theory. It's a great thing in theory to have that we have all these museums and all these like high culture establishments that these high culture institutions that educate our people and who they are and stuff. Um, I'm going to say agree for that because in the something has happened since World War II or since the end of the Cold War where there was a lot of money in the West and we could afford all these things, but most economies, most Western economies, especially the ones that spend too much, are going to collapse in the next decade or a couple of decades if they don't sort out their spending problems. And one way to cut spending, even though it mightn't even save that much, it'd be a good, um, I guess, a good gesture would be to cut off spending on stuff that is unnecessary. Um, Museums and theaters, I guess, are unnecessary. And if we see like how well Broadway and theater is doing at the moment in some countries, um, and then the tourism industry is taking off. Yeah, I'd say agree for that. With the way the tourism industry is taking off, many of these museums and theaters can survive commercially if they're good enough. They're worth their salt. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. Strongly disagree. I'd say yeah, I'll say strongly disagree on that one. Kids, you should go to school. All people have their rights, but it's better for all of us that different sorts of people should keep to their own kind. Um, if we're going to talk about that in terms of nationality, or let's say peoples who are totally culturally different, like if we talk about some Saudi Arabians or some people living in Iran, um, it's always possible for them to be assimilated, but I'm going to say just in regards to the migrant crisis, we could take in small amounts, but when it's huge amounts, it just causes historically it's just caused war and violence. Um, yeah, I'm going to say agree on that. Good parents sometimes have to spank their kids. Agree. It's natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. Agree. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense. Strongly agree. The prime function of schooling should be to equip the future generations to find jobs. Um, I'm going to say agree on that. I think school is also an important institution for instilling a national culture within the next generation, educating them on where they come from and making people kind of more homogenous in their baseline of thinking. They could be free thinkers in all these different ways, but uh, well, I'm gonna say agree with that. Not strongly agree because schools are still important for teaching the national culture and definitely great at assimilating foreign kids. You don't have to wait till the next generation for them to become Irish or of your own culture if you keep them attending school. They probably by the time they finish school, they will feel they'll identify more um, with the country that they were schooled in um, than they were previously. People with serious inheritable disabilities, but it's also important for schools to if it, like we're on the other extreme right here where liberal arts college and liberal arts courses and just worthless colleges are all over the place in the Western world. We have it all over Ireland because there's government funding for just dog shit courses. We don't quite have gender studies yet, but we have stuff like jam making, and we don't have any shortage of jam makers in Ireland. There should be more vocational schools in Ireland, basically vocational schooling that trains the next generation to be, good at some sort of trade or something like that. So I'm going to say agree with that. We need people to find jobs. There's a lot of people who don't want to work these days. They think they're meant for something else. We should train them in a trade so they always have something to fall back on, even if it's computer coding or something. People with serious inheritable disabilities should not be allowed to reproduce. Um, I'm going to say strongly disagree because I really don't like the theory of disallowing people to have sex or just even to reproduce. It's all about choice. It should be discouraged because of course you don't want people to be having more retarded kids. But in general, I think it's a human right to there is a human right, I think, to reproduction. Um, Even if your kind is might contribute nothing to society, or society views them as a nuisance, as a public nuisance, or maybe they're just too expensive to keep, or you contribute nothing. That's all subjective. Um, who is there to society to decide that what is a serious disability? You know, the most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. I'm gonna say agree. Yeah, there are no savage or civilized people. There are only different cultures. Strongly disagree. There are certainly savage cultures, and as I kind of alluded to before, I am not I don't believe in racial superiority, but I definitely believe in cultural superiority. Our culture is definitely far superior to anything else. Western culture, there's a reason why we're the most powerful culture in the world. Why everyone wants to be like us, why everyone wants to be like us, and what you know. I like freedom. I wouldn't want to live in the USSR, or I wouldn't want to live in China where they eat bugs and stuff. I don't want to live in the Middle East where they don't drink, and the fucking Middle East is barbaric. They're barbarian by today's standards. Um, those who are able to work and refuse the opportunity should not expect society's support. Strongly agree. Fucking freeloaders. When you are troubled, it's better not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. Um, I think when you got problems, you gotta face them head on. I really don't like whiny people. I really like the strong, silent type of men out there. Um, but yeah, you gotta talk about it. You gotta get your demons out. So I'm gonna say disagree. The first generation immigrants can never be fully integrated within their own country, within their new country. Um, I'm gonna disagree. Not strongly disagree because I don't want to fuck up the. I'll say strongly disagree because saying that they can never. I definitely have encountered quite a lot of first generation immigrants who they come over to the country while they are young. They come over to Ireland when they're young, and they identify as Irish now. They don't have passports to their other countries, to their former countries, their countries of their birth. They many of them speak Irish. Many of them have Irish accents, and politically they don't seem to like align with like any leftist party or anything like that. They're pretty down the middle. Um, yeah, so I'd say strongly disagree with that. While this is only possible while we take in small amounts, um, to say that it is never, they can never be fully integrated is, I just think flat out wrong. Um, what's good for the most successful corporations is always ultimately good for all of us. Um, I don't really know. I'm gonna click agree. Sounds pro business. No broadcasting institution, however independent its content, should receive public funding. Um, See, this is all relative to whatever country you come from. If you're from the US where there's already a very strong media industry, of course, no broadcasting institution should receive public funding unless it's something like C-SPAN. Well, actually, yeah, I guess C-SPAN probably does require it. Probably couldn't survive on its own if it didn't. That's definitely a yeah. I'm gonna say for anywhere. Disagree. In Ireland, we need to protect our own culture. We're under this cultural invasion, not just um, from non-Western or non-European, non-American forces, but um, there's a cultural invasion from places like America, um, places like California in America, Hollywood. Ireland in the past 20 years is a very different place. And I think that's primarily because we consume too much of foreign media. We do need broadcasting institutions in Ireland to produce Irish media, culturally Irish media, for our own public to consume, to remind them who we are. Like we are not Californians, we're not Canadians, we're not Swedish. Yeah, so disagree on that one. And how you see the wider society. Our civil liberties are being excessively curbed in the name of counterterrorism. Um, I'd say in Ireland, no, not really. We definitely had a terrorist war, or some people would regard them as terrorists, the IRA, a few years ago, and we did suspend a few rights, gun rights, particularly during that time. But a lot of those gun rights and stuff have been restored. A lot of the political prisoner, political asylum rights have been restored since the Good Friday Agreement. So yeah, definitely not in Ireland, but I think in the US, all the spying, the NSA stuff, and all that, the government's data mining of people, um, you know, gathering up and recording phone calls, and then requiring a judge's warrant to just view the calls. And as we saw with Susan Rice, is it? Yeah, with Susan Rice lately, there's nothing stopping them from spying on us if they wanted to. So I'm going to say strongly agree. A significant advantage of a one-party state is that it avoids all the arguments that delay the progress in a democratic political system. Well, yeah, that's just basically a statement. Definitely that is the advantage of a one-party state, of a fascist state. It's just all the stuff that comes with that I don't want. Um, I'm gonna say agree, just because it is factually true. Democracy is very slow. If you want to look at probably the best equivalent of a one-party state or one-party institution is just any kind of business, or like even the military. Just think of militaries in most countries. Um, like they definitely have a very fascist structure to them, but they're supposed to work that way. They're supposed to be decisive, and you use them in emergency circumstances when um, all other options are off the table, when you need to quickly get something done. Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried. Strongly disagree. I believe we need a society that trusts each other, and I think this is quintessential leftist thinking, to distrust your neighbor. Um, if you ask most of your friends who are of the liberal uh, mindset, um, particularly if they're of upper middle class, upper class, uh, they have this holier than thou attitude. They think that they're smarter than everyone. They think they're the people who decides what society thinks, and they are deeply fearful. Just like ask them. They what irks them, what makes them afraid, is stupid people, stupid poor people, and what they might think if we let them think by themselves. Um, so I'm gonna say no, because society needs to trust each other. I trust that people will come to the right decisions. Yeah. The death penalty should be an option for the most serious crimes. Strongly agree. People say the deterrency aspect of capital punishment doesn't work, but that's when you apply it to stuff like murderers, when people who have no concept of what life and death is, like psychopaths. When you got cowardly fucks when you got people like pedophiles, people that are cowards. Um, the best deterrency should be capital punishment for people like that. Um, Definitely. I don't think people like that can usually be reformed. Um, in a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and people below to be commanded. Um, I'd say strongly agree. While I said I'm fearful of power, I think it's healthy to be fearful of power. Um, it'd be Marxist to say strongly disagree. Anything other than Marxism accepts that there is a hierarchy to society, and civilization does require hierarchy. I think it's very natural. Um, yeah, abstract art doesn't represent anything. Uh, Abstract art that doesn't represent anything shouldn't be considered art at all. Now this is funny because I actually have a couple of friends. I got one friend. He runs an architect's page on Twitter and Facebook. Has tens of thousands of subscribers. He's like this traditional guy, or tens of thousand likes, I should say. And he's a very good artist. He sells his stuff online. He gets commissioned to do stuff. He designs stuff, and I like his art a lot better. I find it to be much more impressive. But then I also have a friend who actually probably is as talented an artist. I went to school with him, went to secondary school with him, or high school for years, and he definitely is a very good technical drawer. Probably as good as my friend who does the architect stuff. Um, but when he does art, the stuff that's being put up in all the museums, he gets stuff put on display, on display, on exhibition. It's stuff like pictures of a swamp. Pictures of a swamp with noises from a swamp being played on a little speaker. Um, Yeah, it's they're going too far at this stage. It's kind of like mimetics. It's modern art is it's like they're like bad memes. The only people that appreciate them are the people who get them. And at least memes are funny. More people get memes than get modern art. So I'm gonna say strongly agree. Um, I'd rather there be more sculptors in the world. Like if art colleges, I'd rather if art colleges produce more sculptors than classical sculptors and Renaissance style painters and stuff like that than they did just a bunch of liberal drug taking hippies who um, they're all modern art is the same. In criminal justice, punishment should be more important than rehabilitation. I'm gonna say strongly agree for that because my idea of how the justice system should work, it should always work on the concept of deterrency. You're trying to get people to respect the law, and you're trying to make an example of people who do break the law. While it is important to rehabilitate people, I'd be in favor of stuff like in Ireland, if you've been to prison, you've been convicted of a crime, you must say so to every employer or prospective employer if you're looking for a job. And that can make it very difficult for people who have exited prison to get a job. And I like the idea that once you've served time, you've served your debt to society. It's a blank slate now. It's a blank slate now. So if it's like, unless it's a violent or sexual crime, or I'd say you should be given the blank slate. Rehabilitation is important in some regards, but overall, deterrency is what you want from justice. So, strong punishment, strongly agree. It is a waste of time to try to rehabilitate some criminals. Um, yeah, strongly agree. Sometimes it is a waste of time. That's why we have life imprisonment. The business person and the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist. Um, Disagree. While it's important for the business person and the manufacturer to produce stuff, to produce wealth, to keep the country running, without the writer and the artist, we lose our identity, we lose our own culture. So disagree on that one. Mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. Um, in theory, I love the idea of the nuclear family, where the mother stays at home and everything. But uh, I guess also in theory, I'm a meritocratist, so I think I would encourage this to happen. Um, in a utopia, in the ideal world, but definitely when you see the way Europe is trending at the moment, if we're going to stop taking in hordes of migrants, we do need workers. We do need more people working, and I guess we must encourage our women to work then as well. So I'm gonna say I'm gonna say agree. They may have careers, yeah, because I agree with the concept of it. Multinational companies are unethically Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the plant genetic resources of developing countries. Um, I'm going to say strongly disagree. What's happening with undeveloped countries these days, or developing countries, is companies are moving into them. It's kind of like the new colonialism. It's a quid pro quo thing. Um, Obviously, they take wealth from that region, but they also bring them new technologies. They bring civilization. Africa is a much better place now than it was years ago. Yeah, so like if you look at South America, South America is trending upwards because of these multinationals. Um, Definitely, you could say it hurt them in the short run, but in the long run, bringing businesses to areas, even though they might benefit more from taking than the actual host country might get from the multinationals going to that country. Um, Overall, I think it's for the greater good, and survival of the fittest. The strongest industries, the strongest countries, uh, should be able to do stuff like this. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. Um, I don't really know for this one. I'm gonna say disagree. I still feel a little bit like an anti-establishment sort of little punk. I still feel like a little punk. All right, so we're on to page 5. Astrology. Oh, what does it say here? If you got through that okay, you'll find these propositions on religion a breeze. Oh, all right. Astrology accurately explains many things. Strongly disagree. That's fucking retarded. Oh, fucking hell, why is this page not working? You cannot be moral without being religious. Strongly disagree. I'm not religious. Yeah, actually, no. I'm gonna go disagree. I don't think I'd be a moral person if I was not uh, brought up with religion. I'm not a religious person now, but I do acknowledge that basically all my values come from religion. So I'm a moral person, but I disagree that you still have to be religious. Charity is better than social security as a means of helping the genuinely disadvantaged. While I love charity, I love that you have the private sector stepping in to fill in a lot of the gaps of that modern society has created, the poverty that that exists in modern society. I don't think it's better. I think what we have learned from what's been going on in modern society is it cannot eliminate homelessness, it cannot eliminate poverty and all that. Bob Geldof and Bono come from Ireland, and certainly their Live Aid and Live 8 concerts didn't eradicate poverty in any way, shape, or form. Um, so I'm gonna say strong. I'm gonna say disagree because I like private charity. I'm gonna say disagree on that one. Some people are naturally unlucky. Strongly agree. Like just even going back to what country we were born in. Some people are just unlucky. Some people don't get to be born in in high cultures like the West. It is important that my child's school instills religious values. Um, I think the important thing to take from this is my child. Um, I definitely think parents have the right to decide what religion and which religion their children should be brought up in. So I'm going to say strongly agree on that one. Next. Finally, a look at sex. Sex outside marriage is usually immoral. Strongly disagree. A same-sex couple in a stable, loving relationship should be not excluded from the possibility of child adoption. Um, in theory, I disagree with this. I disagree with a lot of environments for raising kids. And I think that's why, what you guys might know about Ireland is we were the first country, and we might even still be the only one to actually have a vote to legalize gay marriage. And I'm definitely somebody who feels at heart a conservative. I believe in the nuclear family. I believe the primary function of marriage is to produce children and to produce a family. So it's not so much as like marriage is we're letting people who love each other be together. What people should be thinking of marriage is I love this person, I want to be together with them my whole life. They shouldn't be thinking of that. They should be, I love this person enough, I want to start a family with them. I want them to have my kids. I want to raise kids with them. I want to start a family with them. That's what it should be. And I think that whole definition, that kind of axiom that used to be in society has been removed or strongly damaged since we've legalized gay marriage. But it's not going away. And the only way that we can bring back or redefine marriage as an institution, as a familial institution, is to allow gays to adopt and encourage them to adopt. If we can do something like these tax breaks, if we can give all the tax breaks that married couples get, maybe we could give more tax incentives or give some sort of incentive for them to adopt or for married couples to have children again, we might solve this problem that we're facing of, there's just not enough kids being born these days in the West, and we might end up like Japan. We might end up absolutely fucked like some of these countries. Austria and Germany feel that they are forced to bring in all these migrants because they can't produce enough Germans to keep up with the growth of the economy. What you end up getting is an inverted pyramid. So while in theory I disagree with a same-sex couple raising a child, I think as a rationalist, as a realist, it should be allowed. Um, just to redefine marriage as a familial institution. I don't like the idea of uh, poor people raising kids. I don't like the idea of people who live in a trailer, people who living in a caravan raising kids either. But we don't stop that anyway. So I'm going to be a libertarian on this one, and I'm going to say strongly agree. Pornography depicting consenting adults should be legal for adult population. Um, you know, pornography it can be destructive, but so can other vices like alcohol and gambling, and that's legal in my country, and I like them being legal. I like having the choice to do it. So I'm gonna say strongly agree. What goes on in a private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the state. Strongly agree. No one can feel naturally homosexual. Um, I don't really know. It definitely looks very natural from like it's repulsive sometimes, but I definitely have a few friends who seem very natural with it. So I'm gonna say disagree. I'm gonna say strongly disagree because it's an absolute. It says no one. Um, these days, openness about sex has gone too far. Uh, Absolutely. I saw some article recently about like there's some study that they say sex actually doesn't sell. That products that sell themselves with sexy images of half-naked men or women, people actually don't remember anything about the product, so it's ineffective. Uh, Modern society is way too sexualized. I really don't like the modern state of stuff like pop music and everything like that. It's totally degenerate. All right, now let's see what I got. Oh wow, last time I did this, I was a little bit more down around this region. Um, at least I'm like, well, at least nobody can call me a cook. That's interesting. I actually change this test all the time every time I do it. I think to be, a real kind of free thinker, you need to change where you stand every now and again. You need to be open to change, open to having your views challenged. Um, I might do this again in like 6 months' time, post it up and see what different results I got. Um, well, anyway, yeah, I guess that's all for this video. I hope this was illuminating. This was enlightening. Um, Now people know where I stand. Uh, until then.